Hello, peeps. Welcome to the Culture and People cast. Today, I have an old friend, Emily Bradley, on the show, and I'm excited to have you, Emily. Thanks for being here.
Great to be with you again.
Yes, we served on a board back in the day. We're trying to think about how long ago, but we stopped trying.
We won't say how long ago, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So, for our listeners, in a few sentences, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Emily Bradley. I'm happy to be with you today. I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition for First Business Bank, and we are a publicly traded, commercially focused bank based in Madison. And my role really at the bank is to lead our talent acquisition function across the entire footprint, which we are a nationally based organization at this point, so employees all across the country. But in my role, I'm able to really help drive strategy, initiative, and all things people related, really. So I really thrive on helping employees find, their groove and what is going to make them successful in their development, and really in particular around next generation success. I mean, how are we building future leaders in our company, in our communities, and really helping one another kind of connect to whatever it is that they're looking to kind of help drive their career forward. So it's been a great run in all things people. I've really enjoyed it, and certainly it keeps us on our toes for those of us that work in the people space. That's for sure.
Totally, and especially COVID threw us a little bit of a curveball
A
there
little
too,
bit,
right, with
yeah,
the
a little
humans.
bit.
But you've been in this space for quite a while,
Mhm.
influencing culture and people. What is the best thing about that work for you personally?
Yeah, I started my career to go back a little bit. So, I mean, I started always, I think, knowing I wanted to be kind of in business, working within the people space. I really gravitated towards recruitment and talent acquisition, which was great early on. And then I took a little bit of a side track and pursued a master's in higher education, and really felt like my passion was going to be career services in the higher ed space, and really helping to mentor and coach and train and help students figure out kind of their career path, which was a space I also really loved. But had the opportunity to come into the role that I'm in now, where I really can do both, which I've so enjoyed. So, really, what drives me is that, and I mentioned this just in the intro, but is that ability to connect people. So, whether that be connecting them to us as an organization and having them connect with our story, which is a story I love to tell. It's one of the best parts of my job is to tell our story. Connect them with each other as colleagues, as mentors, finding coaches, connecting them with opportunities, career paths. I mean, how do they want to see their role progress? Connecting them with the community. That's another piece that's really something passionate to me. I really help lead a lot of the community involvement and philanthropic efforts for the organization, which is a piece I really love. So helping people connect with the community and give back and find those organizations they want to be involved in, and really see how they can impact the bigger part that we're all a piece of. So I really think for me it's that connection, and how many different layers of connection that can be. So again, with my higher ed background, I really enjoy working with next generation leaders, meeting students on campus, finding the right, first career for them, helping them get off to the right start, and then talking through with them kind of career pathing. And, I've done a lot of work at the bank of creating development programs, formalized programs to really help build those future leaders that we need, and filling those talent pipelines, from a more strategic and workforce planning
Yeah.
perspective. So watching other people succeed, and help them finding their purpose and their why, and how that kind of all connects to this impact that they feel like they can make, is really something that I find motivating. And I think certainly is what is a passion for me and keeps me going.
Yeah, I love how you put that next generation leadership,
Yeah.
because I think organizations, as much as they've been talking about succession planning for decades now, like nobody does workforce planning or succession planning really well.
Hmm.
And and I was even, I worked with an executive for a while when I was in corporate, so not when I left and as a coach, but was working with this leader, and he didn't want to use the word succession planning
Hmm.
because he's like, I don't want to overpromise anything. Well, then don't do it that way. Don't do it, hey, you go here and I'm going to help you get there. Do it in a, hey, here's what we're going to do
Hmm.
to like pour into you, all of you, right? Even
Mhm.
if it's a select all of you, right?
Mhm.
Put a group together that you just say, we believe that you have like potential, right? I
Mhm.
always tell people the phrases from the HR, high potential and high
Right.
performer.
Right.
So they just need to invest.
Mhm.
So I think that next generation of leaders is great.
Mhm.
And
And
I'm
if you
hearing,
don't, I mean, if you don't, right? I mean, you wait till it's too long, so you might have Anna in your mind that she's the successor, for Sally when Sally leaves, but Anna doesn't know it, and she leaves, and then what? So
yeah.
I agree. I hear that often. People don't want to overpromise, but there's a way to have that dialogue so that you're making those high potential, high performers know that there is a plan. Because if you don't make a plan and help them understand it, they're going to make a plan and someone else is going to help them make a plan, and that's kind of worst case scenario. Yeah.
Yeah, like think about that phrasing that Brene Brown uses of
Yeah.
like the story I'm telling myself is, because when we don't hear the story from a partner, from our boss, from whoever, we're going to make up a story in our head. And
Hmm.
so without the career path, and I do think many employees kind of wait for the leader or the organization, like to just give them this amazing career, right? Like
Hmm.
I'm gonna move you here and then you're going to here and then you're going to here. That just doesn't happen that often, even in organizations that are big and have like really defined, right? I want you
Right.
to here, through here. It's still like it's not specific to you. So there's
Hmm.
got to be some of that ownership that comes up
Hmm.
for the individual so that they're meeting the organization. The organization can provide the ecosystem, the individual provides like that passion and that fire and the actual talent to get it done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
And I'm hearing, Emily, that engaging this talent is a challenge all the time, especially during COVID. What are your thoughts on just the overall engagement and performance of talent?
Yeah, it is difficult. And I think we're finding increasingly difficult. I mean, COVID or not, I think, COVID certainly, at least from my perspective, has, pre-COVID, I think people were able to, I like to use the word compartmentalize, kind of their lives, right? You had your work compartment and your personal compartment. And for
Right.
those of us that, have children, you have kind of family compartment. And because of that, then I think you were able to engage in your work compartment a little bit more or differently, or the things that you want to define. Now with COVID, there's no boundaries anymore. I think we're finding, I mean, there is no longer I go to work and then I leave and then I come home, and it's I'm working at my house, I'm living at my work, and so we're finding, I think, that engagement is harder because people, they're not carving out that particular time for work. It's this kind of bleeding into everything. So but we were seeing some of that, I think, the challenge on engaging employees even before that. And I think, again, not to focus more on that next generation, but I think we're finding in our next generation employees that engagement for them within their company is looking different than maybe what we historically saw. So you start to see not as many employees wanting to participate in corporate events, or they're saying they want involvement, they want engagement, but it looks different. What does that really mean? So what we have found is really, and we've always been a company that asks our employees and surveys, and whether that be formal surveys or pulse surveys, we've been doing more of, during COVID, of just kind of these quick check-ins of how's everybody doing. But really this idea of meeting people where they're at, asking them where they're at. I mean, what are you looking for in terms of engagement? Or in this year, it's, what support do you need? It might not be engagement in the way that we've thought of engagement. It might be, well, I'm trying to juggle, 4 or 5 different things during the day. The support I need is, some resource in that way. So we've been trying to meet people, I think, where they're at, understand where that is, empowering managers to really foster those conversations, and then doing more frequency and communication and in touch bases. And, here's what we're planning, here's what's going on. We started with kind of twice a week meetings with our CEO for all the company. Then we moved to, maybe it was once a week, and then we moved to kind of once a month. And that frequency of communication, I think, really helped in this messaging of giving each other grace. So maybe
Mm.
engagement as your company, your expectation maybe isn't in alignment right now with what it needs to be. So maybe it's not so much, gosh, we need everybody, rallying around the all company Zoom staff meeting, and that's how we're saying engagement is going to be measured. Maybe that's not accurate anymore. Maybe it's,
It is.
okay, let's give people the grace to, where are they at, what do they need, asking them what they need, and then finding the most appropriate ways to provide that to them, so that you're seeing the engagement, kind of is relevant for the time that we're in.
Yeah, and I love the example, Emily, that you shared of meeting once a week, then it was twice a, or once, yeah, once a week, then it was, maybe twice a month, and then it was
Yeah.
once. Because I've heard, organizations saying, Yep. So we instilled this daily check-in. It's a stand up every morning at 8, and we meet 3 times a week, and we have happy hour, twice a week. And they're listing all these things.
Right.
And maybe those work and felt really good at the beginning, but
Mhm.
maybe they don't now. And I'm not saying they don't. I just think you have to your point, you have to continually ask
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
ask and ask and ask and ask and ask, because
Right.
like, I mean, the moment, I mean, speaking for me personally, like if I was in an organization, you could ask me in the morning and get a very different answer in the afternoon, you know?
Right, right. Well, and it can't be, I think engagement too, I mean, it can't just be those check the boxes like, okay, engagement for us looks like this, and here's the,
Mhm.
events or the types of meetings, or like you said, the Zoom happy hours that we're gonna do, and we're just gonna continue. It's ever evolving. You have to always be looking at it. I think I've heard from a lot of people, again, at the beginning of all of this, it was, we're gonna do these Zoom happy hours and those are gonna be great. And people got pretty exhausted of doing Zoom anything, let alone a Zoom happy hour where it's harder to dialogue, right? So we really had to look at and adjust kind of what we were doing, the expectation around that, and what works for each team. It's not the same. So giving the grace to say, make the decision that works best to engage with your group managers. I mean, your groups better than
Yeah.
we do as a leadership team, kind of for example, but you have to be so fluid, I think, with engagement. And certainly there's key pieces of engagement and surveying and getting some of that more formal, engagement pulse on what's going on. But the fluidity to how you're addressing it or what you're doing to foster it, is just something that is so necessary, especially during the times that we're in, kind of right now.
Completely. And whenever I give keynotes or I'm coaching leaders, either individually or as a group, one of the things I always say is like, here's my definition of leadership. It is not your job to do their job, right? It's your job to give the resources, support, and encouragement that these people deserve.
Hmm.
Right. And so if you don't look at your job like a resource giver, a support giver, then I think you're doing it wrong. Like I really
Right.
do, because, and now more than ever, that's ever more important.
Hmm.
You don't necessarily need to solve things for them, but is there ways we can help shuffle around? Like I've heard organizations say like, oh, okay, so the peak time, is like 3 hours in the afternoon you need with your kids. So somebody, maybe works earlier and later and just says, here's your main objectives. Could you get those done? I don't
Hmm.
really care what hours you work in.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's that grace you're talking
Right.
about. I
And
think
you can't assume, right? You can't assume. I mean, I think, just even something I've been thinking about lately as we've been doing some other work more in our, diversity, equity, inclusion space and just some strategy work there. But, I think about the platinum rule versus the golden rule, right? Golden rule is, you want to treat other people the way you want to be treated. Platinum rule is you treat other people the way they want to be treated. And I think that really struck a chord with me because I think I've always felt like that golden rule was just a great philosophy to have. And then when you shift it a little bit to say, oh yeah, it should be about how they want to treat it, but to even take it to this kind of conversation of, you can't assume what I think is going to work in managing your day is going to be what works, and I'm going to say here's what I'm offering you, but to say what do you need,
mm,
and how can I help support that and allow that and foster that conversation that hopefully can be very honest, and you've got that relationship with the employee, that they'll be honest back and say, here's what I really do need. And they're not going to worry about, being thought less of because they need more capacity in the day to do virtual learning, or they need to juggle their hours around. So, do you have a culture that already was fostering that honest and open communication, and you didn't just try to start that now? That would certainly make it a little bit more difficult. So we've been trying to, I think, do more of that. Ask people where are they at, what do they need. It's not a one size fits all. We've got 300 employees and 300 unique scenarios that everybody's in, that we need to try to navigate. And that's the challenge of the people space,
yeah,
and forever will be. So,
agreed. So let's get really tactical, because I think we've definitely, enforced that, like asking again, really helpful. But if I'm a leader and maybe I haven't been doing a really great job at
mhm,
engaging my people or establishing a really good culture, what
mhm,
what are some tactical things I could do starting tomorrow that
yeah.
would make a difference in our culture or our people operations?
Yeah. Well, I think we've touched on a couple here, certainly in terms of like just asking. I think a lot of companies, depending on where they're at, maybe they do some sort of surveying work or they have some other methodology, to which they're getting feedback from employees. I mean, certainly a best practice is doing some level of an engagement type of survey that you can really get a good pulse on where the organization is at and help you identify, where there's some opportunities to grow and develop and to, spend some time, fostering, kind of some deeper, cultural component. So having some sort of mechanism, I think, where you are able to ask and get the voice of your employees is really important, as you work within culture. For organizations too, I think, culture and talent and people really needs to be a strategic priority for the company at the highest level. So if people and talent or culture are not one of the strategic priorities and objectives of the company in the strategic plan, I think that is one of the key places that needs to start. If it's not coming from the top and it's not something that's really woven into everything that you're doing, without the people component of any organization, no other strategic initiative is going to be moved forward. So if you have a problem on the people side, the culture side, you are going to continue to struggle in those other aspects. So I think certainly making sure it's kind of in that top priority within the company and trying to drive that. And with that, then your HR leader, your people leaders, your culture leaders, they need to have a seat at that table as well. I think we've made progress in that space. I feel fortunate with the level to which at our organization, our HR team and our leadership team on the people side are at the table, but I hear still from a lot of companies and other HR leaders that don't have that, that maybe it's just the CEO that's more of that voice. So I think to have it be a strategic priority, you need to have the right people around that table. And certainly your head of HR, your head of talent, your head of, kind of people operations, whatever you call it, kind of needs to be right there with it. So
Yeah.
we could come up with a lot of, I think, tactical, this is our space, right? So we could come up with a lot of tactical things, but those are a couple things that came top of mind, I think, to really drive initiatives, ask, meet people where they're at, provide the resources, keep it fluid, make sure it's a priority. Those are things that are really important, I think, to make the impact that you need to foster change.
Yeah. And I love how you say being at the table. I always used to joke with executives that, when I'm encouraging them to have a stronger, I guess maybe bond or
Mm.
connection with their talent or people team. As I said, do you think the mob, like the guy that runs the mob, like he runs all of it? No. Like, have you ever heard of the phrase consigliere? Like, there's a guy behind the guy, like whispering in the ear, giving all the information. Like, I'm a big mob movie. I was watching Casino the other night. Like, there's a bunch of guys or
Right.
gals behind the human, like them behind the them. And you need that perspective, because if you have a really awesome, strategic, caring people person,
Mhm.
they can give you purview into the organization from a trend perspective that you can't get anywhere else. So like
Right.
super, super really important.
Yeah.
So thank you
And
for
I
that.
think and I think during COVID, yeah, I think just one last through COVID too, I think organizations that were able to pivot as quickly as they did and to strategically keep their companies moving forward were companies that had strong people leaders that were already around the table. And I think just even as I think about coaching some of, again, our younger professionals, of just things to ask when you're interviewing with companies right now. People should be asking, how did organizations respond? And if they didn't have a people leader at the table and ready to go, I think they fumbled through how to respond to COVID, because every CEO was looking to their head of people, their head of HR, to say, what do we do? Because it was so unprecedented, right? And so I think it really fell on the shoulders of the HR teams to navigate so much of that. So direct correlation, I think, between the success of transition and pivot through all of this and how strong of a people team and where did they sit at the table, for sure.
Agreed. So let's give some shout outs. Any great leaders that you have that are, doing awesome work in the ring around people and culture work?
Yeah, all the people I work with, of course, right? I've got some great people leaders that I work with, but I think there's a few. There's one in particular that I thought of, based in your neck of the woods. There, Titus Talent Strategies is the name of who they are. They're a partner that we work with on different things, but there's somebody in this space that I know we look to, again, as a great partner, a great consultant. They do all things people, recruitment, retention, engagement, kind of you name it. But they've been a great one to bounce ideas around with. They're always sharing great content, more than willing to help, great people leader, and just forward thinking, kind of gets your wheels turning a little bit. So they're a trusted partner. We've enjoyed our time with them. They're certainly somebody that I thought of right away as I was thinking through, and lots of others I think that come to mind too, that I get different nuggets from, with their writings or the research that they do, or things like that. But Titus has been a great one. They're doing a great series right now on DEI, and kind of their journey and the partnership that they have with a new consultant, which I've really enjoyed, and appreciate. So they're doing great work over there
Oh,
for
I
sure.
love that. I haven't seen their series yet, so I'll look that up because
Yeah.
you're not the only one who's mentioned them. Somebody recently actually mentioned them. I think a
Oh,
former
good.
employee there. So
Yeah.
that's perfect. So
Yeah.
boots on the ground, people fighting in the ring, doing that good work, tightest talent strategies. Let's raise it up, like from a resource perspective,
Mhm.
podcast, book, articles. But what is a favorite resource that, an individual who says, I want to be part of advancing our culture or people's strategy can look into?
Yeah. And we talked about this a little bit. I'm more of like the short little nuggets. So like I've never been a huge, big, thick book
Yeah.
reader. Like, I much like the shorter snippets of,
Give me the
like you said,
Cliff Notes
the
version.
Cliff Notes, right? Yeah. If you know any, that's what kind of master's student I was, which is heavy reading, but I was good at finding Cliff Notes. So for me, it's more, I've got some great, like, weekly, daily, like news, letter sort of things that hit my inbox, which I love around talent and people. It's not something a big more than that, but Harvard Business Review does, really great work, obviously. And from a book perspective, they do a great job of publishing like their top 10 must reads on different things that they publish every couple years. And I know that's something that I have found to be very thought provoking. They've got a great one that they published last year on like ways to reinvent HR.
Mhm.
They have one on, diversity, equity, inclusion that I just picked up that I'm excited to dig into. So again, shorter articles pulled together, but again, it brings you up out of maybe the space that you're in. And you can kind of think a bit more strategically. Those are some of the things that I really like versus just the like happening right here and now. I kind of like to come up out of that and be able to think a little bit bigger picture and how does that impact and what does that look like and how can we lay that over kind of what we're doing and bring in some new ideas. So much good stuff out there. It's really hard to kind of filter through what you're going to actually kind of take in and try to digest. So I think those are a few things that I've really picked up on that have been helpful for me. So
I got my recent issue of HBR magazine. I haven't
mm,
read it. I just took it out of the plastic. It's all
yeah.
on this new, remote first work.
Mhm.
So probably
Oh yeah. Mm,
magazine or not episode. I can't even think
yeah.
of the word.
Yeah.
A good option for everybody to pick up. So thank you, Emily. This
Perfect.
has been a great conversation. I appreciate all of your work that you're doing for culture and people in your workplace, but also the world of work. So cheers to the next generation of leader. Thanks for being on.
Oh, so great to see you, Anna. Thanks for the invite, and hopefully we can jam again soon. It was fun.
Of course. It's in progress, guys.